Hello and welcome to my PBN Draft Analysis video. I've never uploaded anything like this before. I haven't uploaded any leagues, at least, because I never really had the opportunity to, but since I recently got my own laptop, this is something that I'm now able to do. And I'm looking into seeing if this is something I want to do. So no one else in my league is actually uploading, but I decided this is a good test run. So to see if I wanted to upload in any other leagues. The background music isn't mine. I'll link it in the description. Check City, you probably know him by this point. But getting into the analysis, I was pick 10 of 16, so I was hoping to get Jirachi a little optimistic, but luckily I was actually able to get Mew, another base 100 across the board Pokemon, another mythical, and Mew is I'm actually kind of happy. I'm surprised I got it. Pick 10. So Mew is really versatile. It can do a lot of different things. Especially defensive. A lot of people actually run it defensive because with Will-O-Wisp and its own recovery, it can actually run defensive very well, especially against hard-hitting fighting types. So, but usually that is a teams that draft Mew. That is a problem that teams that draft Mew, run into, is that they are forced to run into a defensive role. So that's something I really wanted to touch on with my draft. So you will see what I get later on. But yeah, Mew has a lot of different options. It can set up both with a variety of different options, physical or special, since the attack and special attack are the exact same at 100. Bulk Up, Calm Mind, Nasty Plot. It also gets all the TMs, as you probably know at this point. And its coverage is absolutely insane. So a lot of different options. It can U-turn, it can Volt Switch. So I've already started with my Rocks 2. So I've already established a Volt Turn and Rock setting and Defog. So it's a good start to the draft. And I can use it in a lot of different ways. And I'm really excited to use this because I've never used Mew in Draft League before. So starting around 2, at this point, there were very few teams that could actually draft Mega Charizard X. It does in this league cost me points, but I was hoping. I saw that 5 other teams could get at this point, so I started planning around Mega Charizard X, and I did have a backup plan. If that was sniped, I was going to go with Mega Houndoom. 5 other teams at this point have not drafted a fire. Have already drafted, a fire type or a dragon type. So to me, it looked like it's in the clear, so I started drafting around it. First thing I wanted to get was Gliscor, but I saw that a friend of mine was thinking about getting it, and even though I could pick it before him, I decided not to do that and let him pick it. So I actually went with Melodic instead. Well, not instead, I just moved it up to round 2. Melodic is really comfortable Pokemon for me. I've used it I think this will be the 5th time I've used it. Really specially defensive, good HP stat. Special attack is nothing to scoff at either, and it gets Haze and it gets Dragon Tail, so it's really good defensive Pokemon in general, especially with the Burn nerf going down. So I can definitely utilize the Flame or Marvel Scale a lot more effectively at this point. Leftovers I can run even with Marvel Scale if I can come in on a Scald Burn. So Marvel Scale is really great ability, and it also gets competitive, so I can use that in certain matchups. If they need to run Defog, I can run a competitive set, and by defogging they can boost my own special attack stat. So this Melodic, even though it seems really one-sided, it can do a lot of different things. It does have Coil as well, so it does have other options besides defensive, but mainly I will be running it defensively this league. Moving on to round 3, I actually picked. So I wanted to get Sylveon, but I knew it was going to be a stretch at this point. So I saw a couple of fairies starting to fly off the board, so I went with Florges. This is another Pokemon that I've used, not necessarily in draft format, but just in general, in RU and things like that. I use it in my Gen 6 team, actually, my playthrough. As you can see, Florges, extremely specially bulky with the 154 special defense. It also gets its own setup in Calm Mind, and it's a really good cleric as it has Defog and Wish Pass, and it gets Aromatherapy. So it gives me a lot of different options. It's going to be ran defensive a lot of the time, but it does have a pretty good special attack stat, so it can hit hard as well. The HP stat isn't great, so a lot of things won't be getting the 50%. They'll be getting more around like 45, 40. But as long as I can keep other things healthy besides this, because a couple of my other mons do not have recovery. It also gets the synthesis, so I don't need to specifically run Wish Protect all the time. But it does, like I said earlier, Calm Mind. It can set up on its own. And its coverage isn't great. It gets Energy Ball, Psychic, but nothing insane. So, pretty straightforward mon overall. Pretty bulky, starting to build a pretty good defensive core in my mind. At this point, seeing I do have 2 defoggers already, but I was looking at Rapid Spinners because Rapid Spinners, will want to put up my own rocks sometimes and keep them on the field. So I decided that I need a really good Rapid Spinner, and seeing as I already had my Water type, Mega Blastoise wasn't an option, and I wanted to get in regular Blastoise because I was already getting Mega Charizard X, obviously. So I obviously needed to go to Rapid Spinner, so I did decide to get one of the best in the game in Donphan. Round 4 may seem a little early, but it seems pretty needed. Donphan actually gives me a really good rock resist as well, and it has incredible HP and defense. Its attack is really good as well, and it has Ice Shard priority, which is definitely helpful in a lot of matchups against other dragons. So the Ice Shard priority and its attack stat is really good as well. Earthquake, a lot of things are afraid to switch into a Donphan Earthquake with that 120 attack stat. Special defensively, it's not that great, but I do have special defensive walls. So this is more building up my defensive wall core. Melodic with Wish Pass can definitely supplement Donphan because it does not get its own recovery. It will be running leftovers quite often. But it does get a couple things where I can run it more offensive some weeks more than others. But I'm really happy to use this thing. I haven't used it that often. It's really good ground type overall. It does get rocks, so I will be able to put in my own rocks. So and it starts building up my stealth rocking because I only had Mew so far, and I don't want to run stealth rocks on Mew that often. So this will be my other stealth rocker as of right now. So with that, I do need a steel type. So I was looking at a couple other steel types, and so I really needed to build up that rock resist. And Donphan is good for that, but I needed something else besides that. And what fits the bill, Cobalion. Cobalion is really versatile as well. It has 90 in both attack and special attack. So, and it also starts building my Volt Turn core with Volt Switch. It doesn't get U-turn, unfortunately, but it has an amazing defense stat. Stealth Rocks do absolutely nothing to this thing. It can switch into the Scarfed Rockers, Scarfed Stone Edge users all the time. It really scoffs at those. So, really happy to get this thing. It does get Stealth Rocks as well, so I really have 2 consistent rockers. Well, 3 consistent rockers that I can bring to every game. I can bring one of them to every game. And it does get Calm Mind. It does get all these different things. So I'm really happy to be able to use this thing. Special defense, again, isn't that great, and its speed stat, luckily, is good, which I haven't really been touching on, but Mew's at 100 and now a Cobalion at 108. So I'm really starting to build speed tiers as well, because I'm a little on the slower side as of now, so I'm glad to pick up Cobalion as a steel and fighting type. So it can really bust down those dark types that Mew is really against setting up on and just eliminating them, so and scaring them out, so that Mew can efficiently set up without being afraid of a dark type. Especially with Cobalion getting the ability justified, meaning that if it's hit by a dark type move, its attack goes up by 1.5 times. So that means that teams will be less likely to bring dark types. So that really benefits my team overall, as it allows Mew to potentially bring Mono Psychic if it wants to run Mono Psychic coverage, Mono Stab. Most of the time we'll be running coverage, but it gives me the ability to do something like that. So moving on to round 6, at this point I did need a grass type, and I needed a strong one so that it could resist Mega Charizard X's ground weakness. And at this point, Cobalion is weak to it, and Donphan is just neutral. So I didn't really have anything that great to switch into it. And while I wanted something to resist in general, I thought, why not just get it an immunity? So that's why I went with Rotom-Mow. Rotom-Mow, it's really balanced defensively, 107 in both. It's definitely leaning on the special attack side, but it gets a lot of supportive moves. Like, it does get defog, so I can get the rocks off again. That brings me up to 3 defoggers now with Mew, Florius, and now Rotom-Mow, and supplemented with the Donphan Rapid Spin. So now I'm really starting to build up hazard removal as well. It gets Will-O-Wisp. It gets Trick as well, so it can do a lot of different things, even though it will be ran defensively. Its speed set is really good as well for my team right now, because I have Melodic at, I think, 75. So getting this thing at 86 will make a couple things have to run Adamant over will force things to run Jolly over Adamant or something like that, so that they have to outspeed Rotom-Mow, because it is a possibility that I could run Speedy. I could run it as an attacker, so you never know. I can run a Choice Scarf, trick a couple things. We'll see what I do with it this season. I haven't used Rotom-Mow before, so this is something that I've been wanting to use. It does patch up my electric type as well, which we will get to a little later. But really mainly it was to get that defog and the ground immunity, since I didn't have any at this point. Moving on to round 7, I was originally going to get Sneasel for more priority, but unfortunately Sneasel was taken just a single pick before me, and it would have gotten me a dark type, which I am lacking at this point. But unfortunately Sneasel's taken, and I was really wanting to build up my speed tiers, so I went with Ambipom instead. It's not the greatest thing to put in place, but it still hits very hard, even though it only has 100 attack, which is really not that bad either. But really mainly I was going for that speed tier, which puts me at 115, 108, and 100, which isn't that great. I should get something above 115, but as you'll see later on in the draft, that's something I'm just not able to do. So I got Ambipom at 115. It has pretty good coverage overall. It can run Seed Bomb, of course, and it gives me a knockoff user, which I had very few, only Donphan, to work with. It gives me another physical attacker, so now I have a really good split with Melodic, Florius, and Rotom-Mow running special, and Donphan, Cobalion, and Ambipom running physical, and then Mew can just run either. So it gives me a really good split on that as well. It can't run defensive at all, unlike the other ones, which all of my other Pokemon which can run defensive or offensive. So it's a little bit more straightforward than the other ones. But it does get Skill Link, it does get Technician. So those Fake Outs will really do more damage than you might expect. Skill Link Tail Slap is now something that can run. But I'm really hoping that it really helps my Volturn core as well. It gets U-turn. So I was lacking on that front a little bit with only 3 at this point. So this gives me another one, making it 4. So I'm happy to use this thing. We'll see where it goes. And let's move on. So now we have Archeops, which is actually another rocker, but it won't be running rocks that often. But this is another Pokemon that I really needed more Volturn, as I've been talking about a lot. It does get Defog, which I could run some weeks, but most likely it will be put into that offensive slot. Its attack and special attack stack, both really good. So this thing won't be ran defensive nearly at all, but its attack and special attack stat are really great. It does get things like Endeavor. It gets a really fast taunt, which I did not mention with Ambipom. It does get taunt as well. So I have a lot of different Pokemon that can run taunt at this point. And it can U-turn around, like I've been saying. I did actually I did not mention this with Mew, but I did actually opt to use Mew and Archeops as my Z-move users. I'm considering changing it to Cobalion at this point, but I like the different coverage options Archeops had, and Cobalion has a pretty good move pool as well, but I'm liking the options that Archeops has. The Head Smash is a really strong move, which Archeops is able to use quite effectively, and it has pretty decent coverage overall. Unfortunately, like Flying Stab, it's not the greatest, so it will be running Acrobatics most often, and the ability is really what hinders Archeops into being really a top tier threat. So that's why it's down here at tier 4, is because of the Fetus ability, which when it goes below half, its attack and special attack stats are halved. So even though it virtually becomes useless, but it can still do a little bit more damage with Endeavor and stuff like that. So it also builds up more speed tiers, well, more speed for me, because I've been kind of slow to this point. So I'm happy to get this thing. Saw some people are starting to build up their speed, so I was like, I think now is the time to pull the trigger on Archeops. I was looking at it for a while. It can run a Suicide set as well with just Stealth Rocks. My one thing about Archeops, well, along with its ability, is that I really don't like its sprite. When they added the 3D, it just looks like a fat chicken. So that's one thing I didn't really like about Archeops. Moving on to round 9. This is when I opted to get. I actually went for a second electric type, which I'm considering changing at this point with Rotom Mow and this next electric type. I was originally going to get Zeraora for the Volt Absorb to help out Melodic, but Zeraora, even though it's unreleased, was allowed in this league, and a couple other things that are unreleased, like AZ Floette, that was allowed as well, but Zeraora was picked round 2 because people were really eager to use something that was unreleased. So I went with Thunder's Therian. Mainly this is another offensive threat, really, really offensive, but it can run both sides, attack, physical, and special. Its special attack is obviously much better at 145 than its counterpart at 1 to 5, but 1 to 5 is very usable. I'm pretty sure it gets Bulk Up, and I know it gets Nasty Plots, and it gets Agility as well. So I could run Double Dance a couple of weeks, and I just really liked the offensive capabilities that Thunderous Therian provided for my team, along with Volt switching around. So my main reasoning was if I saw an electric type, I could help Melodic out if it's being pressured and switch into Thunder's Theory and negate the rocks damage that I'm taking with getting the Volt Absorb and pressuring it back out with my own moves. But seeing as I rode a Mo who already 4 times resist electric moves, I'm considering changing that at this point, but we'll see where it goes. To touch on this because you might be confused, we could only have one tier 1 Pokemon as our Z move user. We got 2 Z move users, but only one could be tier 1. So I went with Mew as my tier 1 Z move user, and I opted for Archeops for the second, which I might change as well. So there's a couple transactions I might take on this team might undergo, but its defenses are pretty lacking, but that doesn't mean it can't take a hit. It might be able to take one since its HP stat isn't terrible, but this thing will be able to put in the offensive pressure with Specs or Scarf or something of that nature, because not a lot of things want to take 145 special attack hit. It can run a lot of different hidden powers, and like I said earlier, it can set up on its own. And it also gets Defog, even though that's a pretty niche set overall. That is something I could opt to run if needed. So moving on to round 10, this is going to be where and I was looking at a couple things, but I just kind of looked at the things I personally wanted to use, and one of those was Gorbis. So really doesn't give my team that much more overall. It doesn't really provide anything except for more offensive pressure because it can run Shell Smash, but its defense isn't terrible. Its HP stat is, though, so defensively it's not going to be doing that well, but and its speed stat is awful, but it can baton pass around. So even though I can't Shell Smash and then baton pass because that is banned in this league, there's a couple different things. If I am able to bring it to 2 to 3 matches in this league, I will be pleased, because that'll mean it did its job overall. Hopefully in those matches it's doing its job. We'll see. And this is definitely a league that I'm taking seriously, but you also want to have a little bit of fun. So Gorbis is mainly that. I want to use it as more of a fun Pokemon. The other 10 are more serious than this one. So moving on to a round 11, as you can see, I'm lacking a fire type and a dragon type. So spoiler alert, I was able to get Mega Charizard X. So this thing is an absolute monster. Attack and special attack are both the same at 130 as the Tough Claws ability, making those Flare Blitz hit ridiculously hard in those Dragon Claws, even though it's only 85 base power move. A Dragon Claw can leave a dent, even unboosted. So I'm maybe able to run an Adamant a couple times to really put on the offensive pressure, and it can do, even though it really stands out as an offensive Pokemon, that doesn't mean it can't be run defensively as well. It does have Will-O-Wisp, so it does have the necessary tools to be able to run physically defensively, at least, because it does have that 111 defense, which is really good. A lot of my Pokemon that I'm running defensively are nearly at that same amount, a little bit above, but I haven't used this thing in Draft League yet, and it's always seen as this incredible monster, so I'm really happy that I was able to grab it this late at round 11. It did deduct 40 points from my free points, which I will explain in a moment why I was able to pick up some of the other things I was able to, along with picking up something that costed me 40 points. But special defense isn't great. But I really had to draft around this thing. But there's a couple things I wanted to touch on before I'm into the video. First of all, I do not have a fairy resist. Cobalion is a fighting type along with that steel, so it is not a fairy resist in any way, shape, or form. But along with that, I do not have any fairy weaknesses, so it kind of balances out because Mega Charizard X, although against that dragon type, it is initially also a fire type. So I don't have any weaknesses, and but I don't have any resistances either. So that could be a problem that I look to patch up later on if it really starts to show throughout the league. I think trades end after week 5, so that's something I'm going to have to touch on really early if I'm looking to do it in general. Let's see what else is there. Oh, token system. So the leader of the league, Shaq, shout out to Shaq because he also made my logo. He does have his own Twitter account. I think it's at Shaq85 Logos or something like that. He makes some really awesome logos, so really make sure to look him up. But he created this system called the token system. There's, I think, 3 different options that you could do for the token system. One was to increase your free agent points from 400 to 460. So that allowed me to pick up another tier 1. Oh, and keep on going with my other round 2 tier 2 picks, because instead of decreasing me from 400 to 360, because of that token, I was able to move up to 420 free points overall. So that was obviously the one I picked since I'm explaining it. The other 2 options were the Omni Boost one, which Omni Boost is into every stat whenever you use it on your Z move, as when you use the Omni Boost Z move. And that was an option I was considering, but seeing as I think I could only use Mew I think Mew is the only thing that gets Omni Boost on my team. I'm not 100% sure. And plus you had to state which match you brought it to, because you could only bring it to 1 match. So kind of becomes something that your opponent could prep for. So that wasn't something that interested me as much as the free agent points. The other one was Grudge Match, which means at the end of the season, if you have a lower differential and it's keeping you from playoffs, you can challenge another opponent to a grudge match. And essentially it can bring up your differential or it can lower it. So if you are on the cutoff of playoffs, you can challenge the person ahead of you, and if you beat them in this grudge match, you could potentially push them out of playoffs. Even though it won't affect your record, it will boost your differential so you could beat them out for it. And that was also something I was also considering, but I didn't really want to do that because then I kind of put myself in the mindset, oh, I'm going to be on the border of playoffs. But obviously we're going to try to be at the front of the league the entire time. A lot of the teams in this league are really scary. There's a double weather team that people are very split on overall. Some people consider it really intimidating, and others just consider it really easy win for them. So we'll see how that team does, which I'm really interested in seeing as well. I do have to battle that team, so that'll be a really fun match to prep for. Obviously, there's also there's a couple semi-stall teams, not complete stall, but they do have a lot of bulk, like my team. My team is called semi-stall, even though I personally don't consider it semi-stall. I do, but we're gonna go over a couple flaws in this team. My only psychic resist is Mew, and I don't have a dark type, so I am very prone to fairy setup because I don't have any resistances to fairy, and I'm pretty prone to psychic setup as well. So that was a potential problem for me. I might look to patch it up later, but at this point, I'm going to run with my team and see how it goes. I think I'll be okay in the long run. And I really like my team overall, just like because I like every single individual Mon. I've really liked Donphin in general and Rotom because I haven't, and there's a lot of different Pokemon on the scene that I haven't been able to use. So I'm not sure if I'm going to make any transactions. We'll see at this point. But at this point, I'm going to say I won't be using any. Let's see. I think overall, that's it. So thank you for everyone, to everyone who watches this video. I will be uploading battles, and in the battles, there will be the team builder as well, because I didn't really want to segment it. Some will be post-com, some might be live com, so we'll see how that goes. Thanks for watching. I might do more